The blizzard was so violent that Officer Blake could barely see the road ahead. Snow hammered against his truck, the wind howling like a beast. Visibility was almost zero, until a faint, desperate scratching sound cut through the storm. He slammed on the brakes. There, in the blinding white haze, stood a trembling German shepherd, and behind her, two tiny puppies shivering violently in the snow. Their eyes pleaded for help. But when Blake opened his truck door and reached out a hand, something unbelievable happened. He thought the dog would run toward safety. Instead, she backed away, refusing to move. Her eyes pleaded, yet she seemed terrified of something deeper, something hidden in the storm. That's when Blake realized something was terribly wrong, something that would change everything that happened next. Stay with us, because this story will leave you shocked. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The blizzard slammed against Officer Blake's windshield like 1,000 fists, each gust heavier than the last. Snow spiraled through the air in blinding sheets, turning the world outside into a white, swirling void. Blake tightened his grip on the steering wheel, squinting past the wipers as they fought a losing battle against ice formation. The heater roared, but the cold still seeped into the cabin, crawling across the dashboard and nipping at his fingers. Nights like this were dangerous, for stranded drivers, lost hikers, even wild animals. But Blake never expected the night to change his life forever. His radio crackled with static, unable to pick up a clear signal. Whatever emergency calls might have been out there were buried under the roaring storm. Blake cursed under his breath. Roads were empty, but that didn't mean they were safe. Black ice, fallen branches, snowdrifts taller. Then cars. He'd seen it all this winter. Visibility dropped again. The headlights pushed forward only a few feet before being swallowed by the whiteout. Blake slowed, scanning the edges of the frozen highway for anything unusual. Even with years of patrol experience, tonight felt different. A strange heaviness gnawed at his gut, a sense that something was out there, waiting in the storm. Suddenly, a dark shape flickered at the edge of his vision. Blake's heart jolted. He slammed the brakes, tires skidding slightly before gripping the icy ground. The truck lurched to a halt. His pulse hammered as he leaned forward, staring into the blizzard. For a moment, there was nothing, just the angry swirl of snow twisting through his headlights. Then it appeared again, a silhouette, small at first, moving unsteadily. His breath caught. What on earth? Blake reached over and flicked on the side spotlight, angling the beam toward the shadow. The light cut through the storm, just enough to reveal something stumbling across the road. Not a person, not a deer, not any shape he recognized at first glance. It collapsed onto its haunches, then struggled up again. A chill deeper than the winter cold crawled down Blake's spine. He grabbed his flashlight and pushed his door open. A wall of icy wind slammed into him instantly, ripping the breath from his lungs. Snowflakes stung like needles against his face as he stepped out, boots sinking into drifts almost a foot deep. "Hello?" he called out, voice nearly swallowed by the wind. "Is someone there?" The shape turned. Two faint glowing points stared back at him. Eyes. Deep, desperate, trembling eyes. His stomach tightened. Animal. But what kind? He took another step. The shape moved forward, slowly, painfully, and as it entered the edge of his headlights, Blake froze where he stood. It was a German shepherd, her fur crusted with ice, her legs shaking violently, breaths fogging in weak, shallow bursts. Snow clung to her face like frost on a window pane. She looked moments away from collapsing. Blake stared in shock. She wasn't alone. Behind her, two smaller shapes wobbled forward. Puppies, tiny, freezing, barely standing, and they were walking straight toward him. The German Shepherd stopped a few feet from Blake, her body trembling so violently he could hear her teeth chatter through the storm. Snowflakes clung to her eyelashes. Her ears drooped, heavy with exhaustion, yet her eyes stayed fixed on him, not with aggression, but with a silent, desperate plea. Blake's breath hitched. "Oh no, you poor thing." The wind roared past, whipping her thin, ice-matted fur. She wasn't just cold. She was dangerously close to freezing solid. Blake crouched down slowly, careful not to startle her. She took a shaky step back, positioning herself protectively in front of the two tiny figures behind her. That's when Blake finally saw them clearly. Two German Shepherd puppies, no older than 8 weeks, stumbling through the snow on fragile legs. Their paws sank with every uncertain step. One slipped and fell into a drift, letting out a faint, pitiful whine. The mother immediately turned, nudging him up with her nose despite her own weakness. Blake's chest tightened with emotion. What were they doing out here? How long had they been fighting this storm? Had they been abandoned? Lost? Or had something far worse happened? The mother dog's ribs were visible beneath her fur. She hadn't eaten in days. The puppies looked even worse, tiny bodies shivering uncontrollably, their noses red from the cold, their breaths shallow and erratic. Blake swallowed hard as the realization hit him. They weren't looking for help. They were begging for it. The mother took a step forward, wobbling. Her paws slipped, but she steadied herself, forcing her body to stand between Blake and her pups. She didn't trust him, not yet, but she knew she had no other choice. Her eyes softened, shifting from fear to something else. Hope. Blake slowly extended his hand. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe now." The wind gusted again, blasting them with a wave of icy needles. The puppies whimpered, huddling against their mother's legs. Blake felt a surge of urgency. If he didn't get them inside his warm truck soon, they wouldn't survive much longer. The mother dog tried to take a step toward him, but her legs buckled. She dropped to her elbows, panting, struggling to get back up. Blake rushed forward instinctively and froze as she lifted her head, meeting his eyes with a raw mixture of fear, exhaustion, and trust. That look hit him straight in the heart. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for her babies. Blake exhaled shakily. Decision made. "All right," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Come on, let me help you." The blizzard howled, as if warning that time was running out. But Blake was already moving, and the dog family took their first step toward rescue. Blake hurried back toward his truck, the freezing wind clawing at his jacket as he yanked the passenger door wider open. Warm air puffed out into the night, swirling with the snow like a beacon of safety. He turned toward the dog family, motioning urgently. "Come on, it's warm in here. Hurry." The puppies tried to follow, but the snow was too deep. One tiny pup pushed forward, stumbling, sliding, then forcing himself upright again with a fragile determination that squeezed Blake's heart. The mother watched her babies struggle, her entire body quivering with fear and hesitation. For a moment, she didn't move. She stood in the blizzard, head low, ribs rising sharply with each shivering breath. Snowflakes crusted around her muzzle. Her eyes flicked between Blake's open truck door, salvation, and the dark forest behind her, as if expecting danger to emerge from the shadows. Blake softened his stance, lowering his voice despite the roaring wind. "It's okay, girl. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm trying to help." The mother dog took one step forward, then stopped. Her ears twitched, her breathing hitched. She looked at the open truck like she wanted to collapse inside it. But something held her back. She turned toward her puppies again and nudged them closer, pushing them forward with the last of her strength. The pups obeyed, climbing clumsily through the snow until they reached Blake's boots. He knelt quickly, scooping one up in his arms. The tiny body was so cold it barely felt alive. "Oh, sweetheart," he murmured. He lifted the second pup, tucking both against his chest as he backed toward the truck. The warm air hit their frostbitten fur, and they whimpered weakly, curling into the heat. Blake set them gently on the seat, turning back toward the mother, who still hadn't moved. Her paws were planted in the snow, her body swaying. She looked at her puppies, then at Blake, then at the truck. Fear battled instinct, one step forward, one step back. Her breath came faster, clouding the air with desperation. Blake raised a hand toward her. "It's safe, I promise." The mother dog lifted her head, and for the first time, Blake saw something break through her exhaustion. Trust. Slowly, painfully, she forced her legs to move. Each step was a struggle. She staggered once, catching herself before falling. The storm screamed around her, pushing against her thin frame, but she kept walking, drawn to her pups, drawn to survival. Finally, she reached the truck. She placed one paw on the running board, then another, and with a trembling, exhausted push, she climbed inside and collapsed beside her puppies. Her eyes meeting Blake's with gratitude so raw it nearly brought him to tears. The door closed, sealing them in warmth. The rescue had truly begun. The moment the mother dog collapsed inside the truck, the storm outside seemed to roar, louder, as if furious at losing its victims. Blake slammed the door shut, sealing the warmth inside. Frost instantly formed across the glass, muting the white chaos outside. He turned and saw all three dogs huddled together on the passenger seat. A fragile pile of shivering fur and desperate breaths. The puppies clung to their mother, burying their tiny faces into her chest. The mother curled protectively around them, even though her own body shook violently from exhaustion. Blake's throat tightened. They were fighting to stay alive, using every ounce of strength they had left. He reached for the heating controls, turning the temperature up as high as it would go. "Hang in there," he whispered. "You're safe now. I've got you." But the mother dog didn't relax. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent a jolt through him. It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't confusion. It was urgency. A silent message. "Please, hurry." Blake swallowed hard. "I know. We're going." He shifted into gear, tires crunching through deep snow as the truck lurched forward. Wind pounded the side of the vehicle, shaking it like an angry beast. The road was barely visible, but Blake held tight to the wheel, pushing through the drifts. Time mattered. Every minute mattered. In the corner of his eye, he saw the mother dog attempt to stand. Her legs wobbled. She fell back down with a soft whine. Blake reached over instinctively, placing a steadying hand on her side. Hey, it's okay. Just rest. We're getting help." Her breathing was fast. Too fast. Her ribs rose sharply, each breath shallow and strained. The puppies whimpered softly, sensing their mother's distress. They pressed closer to her stomach for warmth, tiny bodies trembling like leaves caught in a storm. Blake pressed harder on the accelerator. Snow hammered the windshield. The wipers fought desperately. The headlights did little more than illuminate the swirling white void ahead. He could feel the heat from the vents finally beginning to fill the cab, slowly melting the frost on the windows. The mother dog lifted her head again, nudging her pups with a faint, exhausted lick. Then she looked back at Blake, and the look nearly shattered him. A mixture of trust and helplessness. A mother who had nothing left to give, yet still worried about her babies. Blake clenched his jaw. No way he was losing them now. "Stay with me," he murmured as he drove faster into the storm. "Just stay with me. I'm not letting anything happen to you." Outside, the blizzard raged. Inside, 3 lives hung by a thread, and Blake was determined to fight for every second. The truck rumbled through the storm, engine straining against the rising drifts. Inside, the heater blasted warm air, slowly melting the icicles on the mother dog's fur. But Blake felt no relief. Something wasn't right. The longer he drove, the more uneasy he became. The mother dog was no longer shivering violently, and that terrified him. Severe hypothermia could make the body go still. She lay curled around her puppies, her breaths uneven, her eyelids heavy like she was trying to fight sleep she couldn't afford to fall into. Blake reached over gently, his fingers brushing her shoulder. "Hey, stay with me, okay?" Her eyes fluttered open, just barely. She looked at him, weak and glazed, and nudged his hand with her cold nose. It was a gesture so small, so fragile, it made Blake's chest ache. The puppies whimpered softly, pressing deeper into her warmth. Their tiny bodies were warming faster than hers, but their mother... She looked like she was fading. Blake accelerated. But then the mother dog moved. She lifted her head suddenly, her ears twitching despite the exhaustion. Her gaze didn't go to her puppies this time. It went to the back window. She let out a soft, distressed whine and scratched weakly at the door with trembling paws. Blake frowned. "What is it? What are you trying to tell me?" She scratched again, harder this time, but her paw slipped from weakness. The wind howled around them, making the truck shudder. Through the rearview mirror, Blake saw nothing but swirling white. Still, something about her behavior sent unease crawling up his spine. He slowed the truck slightly. "Do you want me to stop?" The mother dog whimpered and lowered her head onto her paws, blinking at him as if begging him to understand. She nudged the puppies with her nose, licking them quickly, then looked back toward the blizzard again. Not at the road ahead. At the storm behind them. Blake's pulse quickened. She wasn't acting like a dog grateful for rescue. She was acting like a dog whose job wasn't finished yet. But how could she even think of going back into that deadly storm? He kept driving, jaw tight, battling the storm outside and the growing dread inside. He glanced at her again, and, this time, the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. Not fear for herself, not fear for her pups, fear for something, or someone, left behind. Blake swallowed hard, gripping the wheel tighter. What had she seen out there? What was she trying to warn him about? The puppies whimpered in unison, and the mother dog let out a low, mournful sound that chilled Blake deeper than the icy wind ever could. Something was terribly, terribly wrong, and Blake wasn't about to ignore it. Blake's grip tightened on the steering wheel as the mother dog shifted again, pushing her nose insistently toward the rear door. Her breaths were shallow, her body weak, yet something in her eyes cut through the haze of exhaustion. A determined, urgent plea. She wasn't done. Blake eased the truck to a slow crawl. "You want me to go back," he murmured, stunned. He looked into the blizzard through the mirror. Nothing but chaos. But why? What's out there? The mother dog let out a soft bark, barely audible but filled with unmistakable desperation. She nudged one puppy gently, as if reassuring him, then tried weakly to stand. Her legs buckled beneath her, but she forced herself up again, wobbling on shaking limbs. Blake's heart twisted. She was risking her own life. For what? He pulled the truck to the side of the road, engine idling. Snow battered the window so violently it sounded like gravel hitting glass. The world outside was a freezing nightmare, and she wanted him to go back into it. "All right," he said, breath unsteady. "Show me." He grabbed his heavy coat, pulling it on with trembling fingers. The moment he opened the door, the storm exploded in, blasting him with icy wind that stole the air from his lungs. He braced himself, leaning into the blizzard, and held his arms out toward the mother dog. She didn't hesitate. Despite the cold, despite her weakness, she pushed past him, landing in the snow with a soft thud. Her paws sank deep, but she didn't stop. She staggered forward, turning her head every few steps to make sure Blake was following. The wind roared. Snow stung his face. Visibility was almost zero. "Slow down," he shouted, but the storm swallowed his voice. The mother dog trudged onward, every step a battle. Blake followed close behind, boots slipping on hidden ice, coat flapping violently in the wind. The cold attacked him instantly, cutting through the fabric like knives. This was insane. No human, no animal, should be outside right now. But she kept going, and that meant he had to. They moved deeper into the blizzard. Blake's flashlight beam flickered against the swirling snow. The mother dog let out a sharp, urgent bark, this time louder, more desperate. She pushed ahead, then suddenly veered right, nearly disappearing behind a mound of snow. Blake followed, heart in his throat. Then he saw it, a dark shape half buried in the snow. Still, motionless, iced over. The mother dog rushed to it, whining, pawing desperately at the mound. Blake's stomach dropped. It wasn't a branch. It wasn't debris. It was another dog. Blake's breath caught as he stumbled toward the dark mound in the snow. The beam of his flashlight wavered in his shaking hand, slicing through the blizzard just long enough to confirm what he prayed it wasn't. Another German shepherd, almost completely buried. Only part of his head and one paw were visible beneath the layers of wind-packed snow. Ice crusted over his fur like a frozen shell. His chest barely moved, if it moved at all. Blake dropped to his knees beside him, snow seeping instantly into his pants, burning cold against his skin. Oh, no. Oh, God. The mother dog circled the buried shepherd, whining frantically, nudging him with her nose, pawing at the snow in a desperate attempt to free him. She barked, a weak, broken sound, pleading, begging Blake to help. The wind whipped her cry away almost instantly. Blake dug into the snow with his bare hands. His gloves were too clumsy, too slow. He didn't care if it froze his skin. He clawed through the icy layers, pulling away chunks of hardened snow that had trapped the dog like a coffin. The cold shot through his fingers instantly, but adrenaline drowned out the pain. "Come on, buddy. Stay with me. Don't give up." The mother dog pressed close, licking the frozen shepherd's face, nudging him again and again. Blake swallowed hard. This wasn't a random stray. This was her mate, the father of her puppies, the missing piece she had refused to leave behind, even if it meant dying out here. Blake's throat tightened. She had been leading him here, begging him to save the one she loved. He pulled more snow away, revealing the shepherd's body. The dog was stiff, ice lodged deep in his fur. Blake pressed his ear to the chest, fighting the screaming wind. Nothing, no breath, no heartbeat. Then, the faintest movement, a tiny, shallow rise. Barely there. Blake's heart surged. He's alive! Barely, but he's alive. The mother dog let out a whine so raw with relief it nearly broke him. He slid his arms beneath the frozen dog's body. The shepherd was heavy, frighteningly limp, and cold enough Blake felt it through his coat. Every second mattered now. Hypothermia this advanced meant the difference between life and death would be measured in minutes. "I've got you," Blake whispered, voice trembling. "I'm getting you out of here." The blizzard howled like it wanted to rip the dog from his arms. Blake staggered to his feet, the frozen weight pressing into him, throwing off his balance. The mother dog walked beside him, as if guiding every step, refusing to leave her mate's side. His boots slipped on hidden ice. The wind shoved him backward. The dog's body nearly fell from his arms. But Blake held on. He gritted his teeth, planting each step with determination. The truck wasn't far, but the blizzard made it feel like miles. "Hang in there," he said through chattering teeth. "All of you, just hang in there." The mother dog barked softly, urging him forward. Together, man, mother, and dying father, they pushed through the storm toward the only chance at survival. The wind slammed into Blake like a wall as he staggered forward, the frozen German shepherd cradled in his arms. The dog's body felt impossibly heavy, as if the cold itself had turned him to stone. Snow whipped against Blake's face, stinging his skin and blurring his vision. Every breath he took felt like inhaling shards of ice. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Behind him, the mother dog trudged through the drifts with painful determination, whining softly at her mate. Her paws sank deep with every step, her legs trembling, but she stayed right at Blake's side, as if her presence alone could keep him moving. "Come on, boy," Blake grunted, tightening his grip on the limp dog. "Don't you dare quit on me." The blizzard roared back, pushing him sideways. He stumbled, nearly dropping the dog. His boots slid across hidden ice, and he slammed his knee into the ground with a grunt of pain. Snow exploded around him. The father dog's head lolled dangerously. "No! No, no, no!" Blake gasped, scrambling to hold onto him. He adjusted his grip and forced himself upright again. His muscles screamed from the strain. The cold gnawed at his fingers until he could barely feel the dog's fur beneath them. He had minutes, maybe less, before hypothermia would take over completely. The mother dog barked sharply, urging him on. "I know," Blake shouted over the wind. "I'm trying." Somewhere ahead, barely visible through the whiteout, the faint glow of the truck's tail light flickered. Relief washed over him. But the storm swallowed the light again as if mocking him. He trudged forward, step by step, each one a small battle. His lungs burned. His vision blurred. Snow clung to his eyelashes until every blink felt heavy and slow. But then, a shape appeared. The truck. He could make out the outline of the door, still slightly ajar from when he rushed out. Warm air spilled into the blizzard, the only softness in a world of brutal cold. "Almost there," he gasped. "Hold on. Please hold on." The mother dog pushed ahead now, limping through the last stretch of snow. She reached the door first and turned, barking urgently at Blake. He stumbled the final few feet and pressed the dying shepherd against his chest to free one hand. With fingers numb and stiff, he yanked the door wider and climbed inside, dragging the dog with him. Warmth hit him instantly. But the father dog didn't react. Blake lowered him onto the seat, heart hammering. "Stay with me," he whispered, shaking hands pressing against the dog's frozen chest. "I didn't carry you through that storm for nothing. Don't you dare give up now." The mother dog climbed in beside her mate, placing her muzzle gently against his. And Blake knew. The real fight to save him had just begun. The truck doors slammed shut behind them, sealing out the blizzard's rage. Warmth flooded the cab, but the frozen German shepherd didn't react. He lay motionless across the seat, ice still clinging to the edges of his fur. Blake's breath came fast and uneven as he dropped beside him, tearing off his gloves with shaking hands. "Come on, buddy. Stay with me." His voice cracked from the cold and fear. He pressed his palm against the dog's chest. No rise, no fall. Then, a faint twitch beneath the fur. A shallow, inconsistent breath. Not good, but not gone. Blake snapped into action. He cranked the heater until the vents roared, directing the warm air onto the frozen dog. The mother dog pressed herself close, curling her weak body around her mate to share what little heat she had left. The puppies whimpered softly, crawling against their father's leg, licking his frozen fur with tiny tongues that trembled from exhaustion. Blake grabbed the emergency blanket from behind his seat and wrapped it tightly around the father dog's chest and stomach. His fingers were numb, clumsy, but he forced them to work. He rubbed the dog's sides vigorously, trying to stimulate circulation. "Come on. Don't do this," he whispered, his breath wavering. "Your family needs you. They led me to you. Don't you quit now." The father dog's body shuddered. Just once, then went still again. Panic surged through Blake. He leaned down, placing both hands on the dog's rib cage, pushing gently but firmly in a rhythmic pattern. Not full CPR yet. The dog was still breathing, but dangerously close to needing it. Blake monitored every tiny movement, every whisper of breath. The mother dog let out a low, trembling whine, nudging her mate's ear as if trying to call him back. Her eyes were wide with fear, shimmering in the dim glow of the dashboard light. She nudged him again, then looked at Blake, pleading, desperate. "I know," Blake whispered, voice thick. "I'm trying. I promise I'm trying." He shifted his hand to the dog's muzzle, feeling for breath again. Still there, still faint, but fading. Blake exhaled shakily. He needed warmth. He needed medical help. He needed it now. He wiped the frost from the father dog's nose, then rubbed his chest harder, trying to draw him back from the edge. Suddenly, the dog's paw twitched, a tiny, fragile sign of life. Blake froze. "There you go," he breathed. "Fight, just fight a little longer." The puppies whimpered louder, pressing themselves against their father's chest. The mother dog placed her head over his, closing her eyes as if giving him strength. Inside that truck, in the middle of a deadly storm, a small family clung to hope, and Blake vowed he would not let that hope die. Blake snapped his seatbelt into place, with trembling hands, his heart hammering against his ribs. The father dog lay wrapped in blankets on the passenger seat, barely breathing. The mother dog curled against him, and the puppies huddled on top of their father's legs as if trying to warm him with their tiny bodies. Blake threw the truck into gear. "We're getting you help," he whispered, voice breaking. "Just hold on." The tires spun against the icy ground before catching traction. The truck lurched forward, plowing down the snow-covered road. Blake flicked on his emergency lights, red and blue flashes cutting through the storm, and pushed the accelerator as far as he dared. Visibility was almost zero. Wind slammed against the truck, rocking it violently. Snow swirled in thick, blinding waves. It felt like driving through a nightmare with no beginning or end. But Blake didn't slow down. Every second counted now. He grabbed his radio. "This is Officer Blake. I need emergency clearance to reach north. Ridge Veterinary Clinic. Life-threatening hypothermia. Multiple dogs. One critical. Static. Nothing. The storm swallowed the signal whole." "Come on," he growled, slamming the radio down. He gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, pushing through the storm with sheer willpower. The heater blasted full force, warming the inside of the cab bit by bit. Blake kept stealing glances at the father dog. The rise and fall of his chest was almost invisible. "Don't you give up," Blake whispered fiercely. "Not after everything. Not after they led me to you." The mother dog lifted her head, placing her muzzle on her mate's cheek. Her eyes were half closed from exhaustion but filled with something deeper, a quiet strength. She licked his ear, nudging him gently, refusing to let him slip away. The puppies whimpered, their tiny bodies trembling. Blake pressed harder on the gas. Suddenly, the truck hit a fresh snowdrift. The wheels skidded violently. Blake wrestled the steering wheel, heart in his throat, managing to keep the vehicle on the road by inches. Come on," he muttered, sweat mixing with the cold on his forehead. Then, through the blizzard, he saw it. A faint glow, a sign, a small building with lights flickering through the storm, the veterinary clinic. Relief crashed through him so hard he nearly choked on it. "We made it," he whispered. "Hang on, we're almost there." He pulled into the lot, skidding to a stop just feet from the entrance. Before the engine even died, Blake was already lunging for the father dog, scooping the fragile body into his arms. The mother dog barked sharply. Fear and hope tangled together. Blake threw the clinic door open with his shoulder. "We need help," he shouted. "Now!" The clinic doors flew open with a sharp burst of warm air as Blake stumbled inside, the frozen German shepherd limp in his arms. The harsh, fluorescent lights made everything feel too bright, too sharp, like reality had snapped into painful focus. A receptionist gasped. A vet tech dropped the clipboard in her hands. "Emergency!" Blake shouted, voice cracking. "Severe hypothermia. He's barely breathing." Two veterinary technicians rushed forward instantly. One guided Blake toward an exam room while the other called out orders down the hall. A white-coated veterinarian appeared within seconds, eyes widening at the dog's condition. "Get him on the table. Warm IV fluids, heated blankets. Let's move." Blake gently laid the father dog on the stainless steel exam table. He stepped back, chest heaving, his hands still frozen from carrying the dog through the storm. The mother dog barked sharply from the doorway, trying to push inside. A tech knelt, gently blocking her. "It's all right, girl," she whispered. "We'll take care of him." But the mother didn't understand. She whined, claws scraping against the tile as she strained to reach her mate. Blake knelt beside her, placing a trembling hand on her back. "Hey, they're helping him. I promise." The puppies pressed themselves against their mother's legs, confused and frightened by the bright lights, the new smells, the sudden rush of strangers. Inside the exam room, the vet team worked urgently. Heated fluids, warm air blowers, thermal blankets, a flurry of motion and clipped commands. Blake caught only fragments through the doorway. "Pulse is weak. Respiratory rate shallow. Core temp dangerously low." He felt each word like a punch. The mother dog whined louder, trembling. Blake pulled her into a gentle hug, surprised when she didn't resist. Her head pressed into his chest, her body shaking with fear and exhaustion. Minutes felt like hours. The storm howled outside the clinic walls, rattling the windows. Blake paced slowly, unable to sit still. The puppies curled up at his boots, tiny chests rising and falling in quick, anxious breaths. A vet tech emerged for a moment, adjusting her mask. "How is he?" Blake asked instantly. She hesitated. "We're doing everything we can. He's fighting, but he's very, very cold." The mother dog whimpered, her ears lowering. Blake swallowed hard. "Just tell me he has a chance." The tech's voice softened. "He does, but it's going to be close." She disappeared back inside. Blake exhaled shakily, leaning against the wall. The mother dog lifted her eyes to him. Fearful, pleading. Blake placed a hand over her head. "We're not giving up," he whispered. "Not now. Not ever." Together, man, mother, and pups, they waited in the hallway, clinging to hope as the vet team fought for the father dog's life. The exam room door finally opened with a slow, heavy creak. Blake straightened instantly. The mother dog rose too, tense, her ears perked despite her exhaustion. The puppies scrambled to sit upright, their tiny bodies trembling. The veterinarian stepped out, pulling down his mask. His face carried the weight of someone who'd fought a battle inside. Blake's voice cracked as he asked, Is he alive?" The vet nodded. A breath Blake didn't realize he'd been holding exploded from his chest. The mother dog let out a soft, broken whine of relief, but the vet's expression didn't soften. "He's alive," he repeated, "but he's not out of danger." Blake's heart dropped again. "What happened to him out there?" The veterinarian took a slow breath. "What you brought in?" He shook his head. "It wasn't just hypothermia." Blake frowned. "What do you mean?" The vet gestured for him to sit, but Blake remained standing. The mother dog pressed close to his leg, her eyes locked on the vet as if trying to read every word. "We found severe frostbite on his paws, ears, and tail," the vet explained. "Parts are completely numb. We're warming him slowly to avoid shock, but some tissue may not recover." Blake swallowed hard. "But what really concerns us," the vet continued, "is the physical trauma. His body shows signs of intense strain." "Strain?" Blake repeated. "From what?" The vet's eyes were heavy with sadness. "From staying upright in that storm for far too long?" Blake blinked. "What are you saying?" The veterinarian crouched, gently stroking the mother dog's head. He was standing guard, protecting her, protecting the puppies, for hours, maybe longer. Blake felt the mother dog tremble beside him. "He wouldn't leave them," the vet said softly, "even as his own body began shutting down, even when he had no strength left." Blake's chest tightened painfully. The vet continued. "He fought the cold until his muscles locked up, until he physically collapsed, and that's the only reason he fell behind in the snow." He looked at Blake with quiet awe. It wasn't weakness, it was loyalty. The mother dog whimpered, nudging. Blake as if agreeing. The vet sighed. We're monitoring him constantly. He's stable for now, but the next few hours will tell us everything. Blake nodded slowly, throat tight. Can she see him? The vet hesitated. Then, yes, I think it might help them both. He stepped aside, revealing the dimly lit room. Inside, the father dog lay wrapped in heated blankets, his breathing faint but steady. The mother dog took one step forward, then another, and for the first time since Blake found them, he saw hope flicker in her eyes. The door whispered open, and the mother dog stepped inside as if crossing a sacred threshold. The room was warm, filled with the soft hum of machines and the faint scent of antiseptics. But her eyes were fixed only on one thing. The German shepherd lying on the padded table, wrapped in layers of heated blankets, his breaths shallow but finally steady. She approached him slowly. Her paws made no sound on the tile, but her trembling body spoke volumes. She nudged her muzzle gently against his cheek. The father dog didn't stir, but his ear flicked ever so slightly. A tiny response, fragile but real. The mother let out a soft, hopeful whine and curled beside him, her body sagging with exhaustion and relief. Blake watched from the doorway, his heart squeezing painfully at the sight. The puppies toddled in behind him, their small claws clicking against the floor as they scrambled toward their parents. One climbed clumsily onto his father's blanket, curling into the curve of his chest. The other tucked himself between his mother's front paws. A family fighting to stay whole. Blake exhaled slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. He hadn't realized how deeply this moment would hit him. Over the next few hours he stayed in the clinic lobby, unable to bring himself to leave. He sipped lukewarm coffee from a vending machine, glancing toward the exam room every few minutes. The storm outside continued to pound against the windows, but the clinic felt like a quiet island of hope in the chaos. Hours passed. Then the vet approached. He's responding to the warming, the veterinarian said. Slowly, carefully. His breathing has strengthened, and we're starting intravenous fluids. He's still critical, but he's fighting. Blake nodded, relief washing over him like a wave. You did the right thing bringing him in when you did, the vet added. Most wouldn't have survived this long. Blake didn't answer. His eyes were drawn back to the room where the family lay huddled together. Something had shifted inside him. A pull he didn't expect. These dogs weren't just strays anymore. They weren't just part of a rescue call. They mattered to him. He stepped quietly into the room again. The lights were dimmed now, casting everything in a warm, soft glow. The mother dog lifted her head as he entered, her eyes gentle, grateful. Slowly, she stretched her neck and pressed her nose into Blake's palm. It felt like a thank you. And a plea. Blake sank into a chair beside the table. One of the puppies wiggled across the blanket, crawled up his arm, and curled into his lap without hesitation. Blake laughed softly, the first real laugh he'd felt in weeks, and carefully stroked the tiny pup's head. You've been through a lot, huh? He whispered. The puppy gave a sleepy sigh and nuzzled deeper into his jacket. Blake swallowed hard. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if the father dog would fully recover. He didn't know if this little family had anywhere to go. But one thing was becoming clearer by the minute. He wasn't ready to walk away from them. Not now. Maybe not ever. Morning crept slowly into the clinic. Soft gray light replacing the storm's chaos outside. Snow piled in thick drifts against the windows, muting the world in a cold, eerie silence. Blake hadn't slept at all. He sat in the same chair beside the recovering father dog, the puppies curled in his lap, the mother dog resting with her head against his boot. The veterinarian entered quietly, clipboard in hand. Blake stood immediately. How is he? The vet offered a tired but hopeful smile. Stable. Still weak, but stable. His body temperature is almost back to safe levels. It'll take days, maybe weeks, before he regains full strength, but he paused. He's going to make it. A breath of relief escaped Blake. The mother dog let out a soft whine and licked her mate's ear. The father dog shifted slightly, his first conscious movement since collapsing in the snow. But the smile faded from the vet's face. "There's something else," he said gently. Blake tensed. "What?" The veterinarian sighed. "I scanned them this morning for microchips. There were none. No identifications, no owner information. And—" He hesitated. "The mother is severely underweight. The puppies, too. Their injuries. The way they were found. It all suggests they didn't run away from home." Blake's chest tightened. "You think they were abandoned?" "I'm certain." The vet's voice was soft but firm. "And in this storm, they never would have survived on their own." The words hung heavy in the room. The mother dog looked up at Blake, then really looked, her eyes full of a quiet plea, a question she couldn't express but he understood instantly. The puppies nudged deeper into his lap, warm and trusting. Even the father dog, weak as he was, shifted his head toward Blake, as if sensing the man who had carried him through death's cold grip. Blake swallowed hard. He had come to save them. But somewhere along the way, they had saved something in him, too. The vet continued gently. "They'll need ongoing care. Warm shelter, food, medical follow-ups, a stable home." Blake ran a hand over the puppy sleeping against his chest. The tiny creature let out a sigh and pressed closer. Decision began forming. Not forced, not rushed. Natural, obvious, right. He lifted his eyes toward the mother dog, who rose and placed her paw on his knee, her gaze steady and hopeful. Blake's voice was quiet but certain. "They're not going to a shelter." The vet blinked. Then, "Where will they go?" Blake looked at the little family gathered around him. Broken, brave, loyal. "Home," he said softly. "With me." The mother dog let out a soft, relieved whimper. The decision was made. The storm finally broke by the next morning, leaving the world blanketed in thick, glittering snow. Sunlight poured through the clinic windows, warm and golden, a sharp contrast to the deadly night that had nearly taken everything from the little dog family. Blake stood at the counter, signing the last of the release forms. His hands trembled slightly, not from cold this time, but from the weight of what he was choosing. The vet handed him a folder of instructions, medications, and follow-up appointments. "You're really doing this," the vet said, a soft smile on his face. Blake nodded. "Yeah, they've been through enough." The exam room door opened and the mother dog walked out slowly, her steps still stiff but steady. One of the techs had placed a bright red scarf around her neck for warmth. She looked beautiful, tired, recovering, but dignified. She went straight to Blake, pressing her head against his leg as if she'd always belonged there. Two techs followed behind her carrying a soft basket filled with blankets. Inside lay the two puppies, peeking out with wide, curious eyes. One yawned, the other hiccuped. Finally, a vet assistant appeared, guiding the father dog with the help of a harness. He was weak, his movements slow, but his eyes, they were alive. A spark of recognition lit them the moment they landed on Blake. Blake lowered himself to one knee. "Hey, big guy," he whispered. The father dog made a small sound, part whine, part sigh, and pressed his forehead gently to Blake's chest. Blake wrapped his arms around him without hesitation, giving him the softest hug, careful not to disturb the healing bandages beneath his fur. "You're safe now," Blake murmured. "All of you." The walk to the truck felt different this time. Not desperate, not frantic, hopeful. The mother dog trotted beside Blake, nudging his hand every few steps as if checking he was still there. The father dog was carried carefully by two techs, and Blake moved ahead to prepare the truck interior. He had lined the back seat with thick blankets and turned the heater on full blast. It looked less like a police truck and more like a mobile nursery. And somehow that felt right. The puppies were placed first, tumbling playfully before curling into a tiny ball. The mother dog climbed in next, lying protectively beside them. Finally, the father dog settled down, resting his head on Blake's jacket, which Blake had spread out like a pillow. Before closing the door, Blake paused. The mother dog lifted her paw and placed it gently on his thigh. Her eyes glimmered with gratitude deeper than words. The father dog blinked slowly, his breath soft but steady. The puppies wiggled toward Blake's hand, licking his fingers with tiny tongues. He felt something warm bloom in his chest. "All right," Blake whispered. "Let's go home." He climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. The truck rolled forward, sunlight glinting off the snow as the little family behind him settled into peaceful sleep. They had survived the storm. They had found safety. They had found each other. And as Blake drove toward a future none of them had expected, he realized something profound. Sometimes you don't choose family. Sometimes family finds you.